Moonshine Jesus, baby, alright. Moonshine Jesus, a surprising delight. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are brought to you by ProgressiveChristianity.org, a wonderful place to find all the progressive Christian resources that you need. I hope that you will follow them and us on social media and that you will subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Today we will be talking about Blue Beetle, and so I need to tell you that if you haven't seen it, we will spoil it for you. So just be prepared for that, but we're going to have so much fun spoiling it for you. I am joined as always, by the one and only Mark Sandlin. How you doing today, Mark?
I am doing fantastic, sir. Cannot wait to leap into this. Wasn't sure what I was going to come away from the movie before watching it.
Yeah.
Oh, I am so ready to be talking about this movie, man.
Yeah. We're going to dive into it, and it's going to be so much fun. But not until we have some drinks. Right?
Indeed.
And I bet you got a drink. Do you have a drink?
I do. I decided since our family, which is the core of the movie, comes from Mexico, I went with my favorite Mexican drink, a margarita. And of course, since it's the Blue Beetle, I made a blue version of a margarita.
Of course. Perfect.
How about you, sir?
Perfect. Okay, so I've also got a blue inspired drink for the Blue Beetle. And so I put some blue curacao together and also tequila and mezcal. So I've got kind of a smoky little drink here. And
it sounds like kind of almost a smoky margarita, but not quite. Just sounds lime juice.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So
and your blue comes a lot closer to the Blue Beetle color. I couldn't quite.
If I could have gotten some purple in there, I would have been really happy.
That'd be perfect.
I'll take blue. So let's take a sip and come back, talk about Blue Beetle.
Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You're joining us for our Geek Out segment. So what we do here is we are both big geeks, and we will spend a little time letting our geek flag fly and enjoying talking about just the movie and the geek part of the movie. But we promise, while we could go on and on about it, we will not. We will definitely keep it as compact as possible, come back after that and spend a little more time doing the theopolitical kind of viewpoints that show up in the movie, of which there are plenty. So for those of you who are not familiar with Blue Beetle, it has actually going back to the 1930s in comic book, but let me just kind of catch you up on where this movie happens and takes place and who's involved. So Jaime Reyes suddenly finds himself in possession of an ancient relic of alien biotechnology called the Scarab. And when the Scarab chooses Jamie to be its symbiotic host, he's bestowed with an incredible suit of armor that's capable of extraordinary and somewhat unpredictable powers, forever changing his destiny as he becomes the superhero Blue Beetle. So, quick question for you here. What's the best DC movie since the 2017 Wonder Woman movie, and why is it Blue Beetle?
It's a fantastic movie, and I think partly the reason it's Blue Beetle is because it does a great job of balancing being a superhero movie and all the ridiculousness that comes with that, with fun and with Latinx culture. And so I think they really leaned into that in a way that really benefited the movie. You know, it was a fun movie to watch.
Absolutely.
We got to learn about the Blue Beetle. And I think, you know, one thing that DC has done a lot is really lean heavily into the Holy Trinity, right?
Right.
The
Big time.
Batman, Superman, and
And
Wonder Woman.
Flash. Oh,
And
that's
then
good.
and then we got okay, and then we got the Flash.
Flash.
Yeah, we got one Flash movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one thing that Marvel did really well, right, was
Yeah.
it took some characters that nobody really knew that were kind of on the margins,
Mhm.
and they allowed themselves to have some fun with it. And
Yeah.
I think that's what we're seeing here is we got
Absolutely.
a superhero that a lot of people didn't really know about,
Mhm.
and we got to really dig into it, and they got to have fun with it because the people
Yeah.
weren't as familiar with the lore.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting that James Gunn had nothing to do with this movie. And at the same time, it feels a lot like the first Guardians of the Galaxy, which was what his pet movie that really kind of he was passionate about and was like, we're going to make it. And it was marginal characters, but they learned how to have fun with it and really get us to connect with the main characters in a way that other movies sometimes didn't. They didn't go quite as dark with it as some of the other ones were going. It felt more like a live action comic book. It felt like the experience of reading a comic. And I really think they do a fantastic job of that in this movie. It's got the campiness, it's got the self-awareness, but it also is trying to be serious about what's going on. Doesn't feel the need to explain everything, and it just moves ahead with the story and dives into the characters and gets us to be, happy and related to them. It's part of why I think that this movie, and I'm curious about your response to this, I think this movie is sort of proof that superhero fatigue actually isn't a thing. I know it's not doing great in the box office, but I think that has to do with marketing and the fact that there's a strikes. The actors weren't out promoting it the way that they probably were counting on being the biggest part of it. I mean, the plot's sort of a cliche superhero origin story. That we've seen it almost 100 times. There's not a lot of surprises in it, but this movie, it has heart and it has humor. And like I said, it's a bit self-aware. I think that what people are tired of are high production superhero movies with no heart and no true way of identifying with the main character. And so I'm curious if you felt similar to that, or do you see it a little bit differently?
Well, I was going into this thinking about that explicitly because we've talked about that a lot, and we're seeing more and more in publications about the superhero fatigue. And one of the things I thought was interesting about this movie, and we've seen this with the last maybe 3 DC movies, is that there is a huge discrepancy between how critics respond to the movie and how the audience who watches it responds to the movie, right? So it's got a 76 or something % fresh rating from the critical review on Rotten Tomatoes. Audience scores like 92%. And I think some critics actually are experiencing superhero fatigue. I think they're kind of tired of this, but I don't think the audiences really are. I think audiences, when they find a superhero movie that really does have heart, that is really leaning in to some of the things that superhero movies are really supposed to be about, which is like commenting on society through a lens of a superhero, that whenever they lean into this, like Blue Beetle did, I think that the audiences really like that. So I think the audiences and the critics are kind of in different places on superhero fatigue.
Well, taking off on your point of audiences are liking superhero movies that are commenting on society. For instance, we talked about when we're looking at Secret Invasion, that they would hit it and then they'd kind of ignore it. And it was supposed to be a political thriller, and it seemed well. Here is just before we dialed in to do the show. Here's a quick list off the top of my head of the societal issues that Blue Beetle talks about: gentrification, economic disparity, misogyny, immigrant survival, finding your purpose, college debt, importance of family, Guatemalan child soldiers, indoctrination of war, community. That's just 10 that was literally, I almost couldn't type them fast enough. I'm curious, do you think it worked addressing so many issues without fully resolving a lot of them? And if so, how do you think they pulled that off?
I think it worked in this case because that is a part of the Latino experience in the
Yep,
United States. That like it's a complicated experience.
absolutely.
It's an experience of multiple identities. It is
Mhm.
an experience of wanting like the American dream, right? Going to college and also having to deal with like loan debt and also having to deal with like not being able to find a job because of who you are. It's
Mhm.
while facing the possibility of losing your home. I think the reason that it worked here and it didn't work in Secret Invasion is because it's authentic to the story that they're trying to
Yep.
tell, and it's a complicated story that doesn't really have a resolution.
Yeah.
It's helping us to experience what it's like to be that character. Secret
Yeah.
Invasion, they touched on it, and it didn't really have anything to do with the character's experience. It was like they were trying to touch on it just to touch on it. And I
Yeah.
think that's like authenticity makes a big difference, right? And so I
Absolutely.
think this was authentic.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like this was so rooted in the true Mexican American Latinx experience, and all of these things are part of daily life and what's real and what has to be dealt with. It's kind of like Milagros' sister says, talking about the rich folks that are in
Yeah.
the big company. I just blanked on the name of the company. I don't understand why I did that.
Cord?
Cord,
Yeah.
talking about the Cord folks and said, we're invisible to people like that. It's kind of our superpower, which I thought was a brilliant line and kind of set up what would happen the rest of the movie. I thought that was when I realized, oh, the writing in this is going to be really on point because it was just
And it
this
was.
perfect line for this type of movie and talking about this family and their reality of what they're having to deal with. I loved it. I really thought it was incredibly powerful. So let's jump to the family. We've touched on the family a little bit, and the family is core to this movie. I mean,
Right.
without the family, this is not a movie that probably isn't going to work. I'm curious. Every one of the characters has a real growth arc from the beginning to the end of the movie, which doesn't always happen with characters that are introduced almost as side characters, not the main character.
Yeah.
I'm curious, which growth arc did you appreciate the most? That's a tough question. I know that I'm throwing a really difficult question at you right off the cuff.
I like the grandma's growth arc, and I think it was. I mean, in part because it was funny, right? You get the whole movie where she's kind of this mild mannered Nana who isn't real in tune with what's going on, doesn't
just
notice
sewing
that
and
Jaime's got
knitting, got her headphones on all the time.
Right. Yeah. Just the power goes out. She turns the light on. But we find out, at the end that she was like a part of the revolution. And but I think that's also I like that because we know that like people who have lived in say Central American countries that has been a lot of their experience and. One of the reasons that it has been their experience is because of the United States government and the government involvement. And so I like the fact that then the grandma
School of America from Panama, the horrible school. I love that they were fearless about mentioning the stuff that America screwed up. It was
right. That's right. Yes, it was unapologetic, and that's good. That's what we needed. That's what made it work. So I like the grandma's growth arc in that. I thought it was fun to see her like then use those revolutionary skills to take out Cord. I liked it.
Yeah.
How about you? Did you have a favorite growth arc?
I love grandma's mentality of now we fight, we'll cry later. Like that kind of like the family has to come together to protect the family. Well, I would have probably said grandma too, frankly. But I have to say, it was a small arch, this particular character, but oh my God, Rudy, George Lopez. I've always liked George Lopez. He was crazy. This is the best I've ever seen him.
Perfect casting. He was great for that character.
Top to bottom, perfect.
Mexican Doc Brown.
Yeah, exactly. That was a great line. Such a great line. And I loved all of their pop culture references in the movie. It was, what was the line about Jenny Cruella Kardashian. It's a great
Oh
line.
yeah.
His sister says she's like
Yep,
Cruella Kardashian. Just a great
yes,
line.
yeah,
And I did
yeah,
love his sister's growth. She was so kind of anti everything that's not their culture. And
yeah,
ultimately, she's still protecting the culture, but she was willing to bring Jenny in and recognize as a good person. And there was this growth of shut everybody out to, okay, I see why it's important that our culture, our community, and that folks that are really trying to be a part of that and trying to be promoted really need to be brought in. And I really like that. But Rudy, it was just fun. Batman's a fascist. There's so many great lines from him. And at first, he just felt like rough and yelling in the face of everything. And by the end of the movie, we have him being invited to be a part of the solution. And you could tell he was kind of overwhelmed. He's like, "Did you tell her to say that? That was something that sounds like you would have told her to say." Like he kind of is like thrilled that he's being brought in and gets to be a part of the solution, which I thought was so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah. It really worked. It really worked.
Now, there was one thing in the movie that I don't know if anybody picked up on, but it hit me weird. Now, we've already said this is a spoiler-full show.
That's right.
So I'm about to do one of the big spoilers of the movie.
Okay, spoil it for us, Mark.
Yeah. So his dad dies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's traumatic. It's done beautifully. I mean, I'm literally like wiping tears from the edge of my. There was twice in the movie where I'm just trying to get the tears out of my eyes so I can see reasonably well, which is again one of the beautiful things they do in this movie. It's fun, it's silly, it pokes fun at itself. It's a great superhero. There's all kinds of action, but the emotions are real and connected, and you care about the characters, which we don't always do in superhero movies. So he passes away. And they move into an action scene, and they started off with Rudy in the big bug turning music on. Do you remember what song they played?
No. What was it?
Cruz Kickstart My Heart.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
I was like, what? He just... And you're going,
he had a heart attack.
It was like
Kickstart My Heart.
Just felt wrong. It was like he just passed away, and you're going to do this like I don't know that one. I got to hit that one. Hit me a little weird.
You know, Mark Sandlin was ringing in my head whenever he died because I was remembering, Mark, you saying, "Can there be a DC movie where the father figure doesn't die?"
That's true. That's true.
And we haven't got one yet.
We still haven't. Yeah. And this would have been a movie that they seem to be like letting go of a lot of the standard DC stuff and trying to reinvent and recreate. Yeah, that would have been a great. But yeah,
did he need to die? Did he really need to die in this, Mark?
I don't think he needed to at all. I mean, it gave this big emotional moment. But there's so many other ways that could have happened. I don't think it was necessary. The afterlife sequence, and maybe that's why they did it, to give it sort of that Black Panthers moment of going to the afterlife and seeing your ancestors. Because ancestors.
That's exactly what I thought when I saw that.
Yeah,
it's like Black Panther.
It felt a whole lot like it, and maybe that's what was going on. I don't know. So I had several other things I really wanted to talk about how the Scarab, as it gets more bonded to him, becomes more humane. I kind of love that. That Jenny, as she becomes more and more accepted by the family, becomes a more and more interesting character. There was so much more to talk about, but we promised that we would not geek out for too long, and so I want us to keep that promise. So we're going to take a quick break and come back on the other side with our Theo Politico segment.
Hello, and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show, where today we are talking about the Blue Beetle, and we are diving into the Theopolitico segment where we will talk about theology and politics of the Blue Beetle. And so, Mark, there were a lot of great lines in this,
Oh, yeah.
and I wanted to throw some of them to you and see
Okay.
what you thought about them.
All right, we'll
Okay,
see.
so the dad
Yeah.
says, we're on a journey. All the stuff in the house, all the stuff they have, is just stops. It's not the destination. We don't know where we're going, but what's important is that we go as family.
Yeah.
What do you think of that theology?
Oh, I think that's a brilliant theology. I do. I love the line when it happened, but I also then thought, as the movie was going on, when you look at Jenny Cord and her broken family and how poorly that family treated some of their members, not her and her dad, but some of the rest, I thought that really almost needed a caveat. Like when the family is supportive and healthy and helping each other, that is the most important thing. And it maybe would have benefited also if there had also been sort of a side chosen family, because particularly in our modern world, we're seeing a lot of folks who come from broken homes who are choosing who their family is. And that becomes central to them. And that line would stand very much for that chosen family. But I do think it's central to understanding that it's not our stuff. It's not what we're surrounded by. It's who we're surrounded by and how we all support each other. I mean, one of the things I loved about this movie was we have a superhero who has to be rescued by his family. I can't think of the last time we see that this family who's in sort of impoverished situations up against this giant corporation says, no, that's our family. We will go and we will take on this whole damn corporation to save our family. And that's the core of why I think theologically it is the perfect understanding of what real love looks like and what really being there for each other and why it matters so much. I mean, what did you think of that line?
I loved it. I thought this was a great theological movie. And I love that throughout this movie, we saw the juxtaposition between the Cord family and the Reyes family.
Absolutely.
And because the Cord family is like what we set up as an ideal, right? It's like a wealthy family, you know, they're very well to do. They've got this huge successful business. Then we've got the Reyes family that is, that's living in this house they're about to lose. They're immigrants. Not all of them, are documented, and we see this family that's really struggling, and yet they show us that it is the family that really makes life worth living. It's like the people you surround yourself with, the people who care about you that make life worth living. And you can have all the things in the world and be miserable, or your soul can be can just be decrepit. And so I thought it was a lovely way of showing us that that family is important, but as you said, the family we choose. I thought it was great theology. Yeah. So one of the other things that we saw was this issue of Jaime being a first generation college student, who's trying to get out of this
trying to work within the system to get out of the
to get out of poverty,
to get out of what the system has created.
That's right, exactly. And so there's this great scene at the very beginning of the movie where he puts on his mortarboard, right? He's at the airport. He's going to see his family, and he says, "How do I look?" And the guy in front of him says, "Like you're 6 figures in debt," right? And so, I saw there was a lot of conversation about this, about how you advance and stuff. So I'm curious, Mark, what you think this says. In our country, is college the future for people? Is that the way out? And what does it say about us as a country when we not only accept that people might get 6 figures in debt, but we actually encourage people to do that, to take on huge debt for college? What does that say about us?
It says that capitalism sucks. That's what it says.
It does.
Because if you take away the money issue, yes, education is the way out. It's not just the way out of poverty. It's the way to end poverty. It's the way to end homelessness. It's the way to end marginalizing folks for any reason. education is what gets us there. So yes, in so many ways, education is the way out. However, we keep structuring education in a way that either it is not education, it's indoctrination, and it teaches you to hear stuff and spit the stuff back out, which is great for politicians. Like, yay, we have a whole society who have learned, listen to what your leaders say and then repeat it, because that's how you learn and are right and are educated. And rather than teaching actual education and how to do that. I think it's absolutely horrific that we've created that. So it's either that, where the education that you can get for a reasonable amount is just repeating, learning indoctrination, or it's for the elite. It's for the people who have a lot of money. Or you can go in deep debt, and no matter how much you learn, you're just going to be trying to dig out of it, and it puts you right back to where you were, just in a different way, where the reality of your life is so immense that you can't quite dig out of it enough to go and change the world and make a big difference and help those around you. So for me, it was a line that was like, yeah, kinda, but
yeah,
reality. Yeah. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's horrific that we do this. So I agree. I think education is vital, and that we should always be striving to have a more educated society, because, I mean, we've seen some of the dangers of what happens whenever we don't have an educated society.
Boy, oh boy.
Can kind of manipulate people into not thinking for themselves. But I think it's extremely immoral that we allow people to go into such debt. And so, I think one of the solutions to that is that we should give people 4 years of college for free. I think we should allow people to do that. And I think we should forgive existing student loan debt.
Completely.
Because there's nothing that would stimulate the economy more than forgiving people student loan debt, so they have money to invest in the economy.
And there's nothing that would make this a more successful nation than having a highly educated group of folks that live here. I mean, admittedly, I know that politicians don't really care how successful they are as long as they stay in power. And that's the battle we're fighting, ultimately. It's like, do we want to have a better nation, or do we want to let the people who have power and have had power for far too long continue to keep it? I mean, that's the simple divide.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. So one of the other things that we hear multiple times from Cord, from Susan Sarandon's character, is
Susan Sarandon also loved her. I mean,
she was great.
She's always
great.
good.
I mean, she's always good, but yeah.
I mean, I think the writing for her was really subpar. But she's such a great actress. Her little face twitches, and the way that she'd look at people elevated the dialogue beyond what the writing was for. Sorry, I just need to put that out there.
It's like Meryl Streep, and if they could do they could just hand her like a pile of crap, and she'll turn it into gold.
It'd be amazing.
So, I agree. I think she did a good job. So one of the things she kept saying over and over again is that sacrifices must be made for the greater good. And so we've talked about this line a number of times, but we typically talk about it as the advantages of, like sacrificing for the greater good. That's how it's typically portrayed. And that is not how that line is portrayed in this movie. She's doing evil things and saying that they're for the greater good.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, Mark, contrary to the way that we usually talk about this, are there times when the greater good actually isn't as important as what's best for individuals?
I actually don't know. I think it's always the greater good is always the thing that we need to be looking at. But I think it's setting up a straw man argument, like that the only way that we can have the greater good is for you to suffer or to die or to whatever. I mean, and just part of making her evil is that she's using not ad hominems, but she's using false attacks that she sets up, and the outcome, like, to say that's the only way that the greater good can be served is just a false argument. So no, I think that we always need to be looking at what the greater good is. But particularly when it comes to horribly harming someone or killing someone, that we need to be 100% sure that we've looked at all the alternatives and all the ways and have tried most of them to see if there's other ways to serve the greater good. It's one of those lines when it's said, you kind of go, okay, let me think about that. But I mean, how did it hit you?
Well, I mean, I don't think she actually had the greater good in mind, which is, I think,
Her
what we
greater
also hear from politicians, right? That you've got to sacrifice for the greater good when
Yep.
they're talking about especially marginalized groups. And so I
100%.
think particularly the Latinx community and undocumented folks who are propping up the economy through what they're doing
100%.
and saying, oh,
Even
we've
the
got to get rid of you. We've got to get rid of you for the greater good.
Yeah,
It's
talk
for the
about them
greater
propping up the economy. Even the movie industry, 1/3 of ticket purchases come from Latinx community.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe
Yeah.
that. So it's so I think in this case that I think whenever we're dealing with marginalized communities, asking marginalized communities to continue to make sacrifices for what is best for, say, white people in power is not really the greater good.
No,
That
it is
that's the
definitely
greater
isn't.
evil. Okay, so
Absolutely.
there's at least one other thing I want to make sure we get to,
Okay,
and that's
all right.
this whole thing about names. And so names, I
Oh.
think, is one of the common themes in this movie.
Yeah.
And so we get Jaime's name repeatedly. Yeah, we get Jamie, right? The receptionist. We get the scientist who's
Dr. Sanchez.
created all this stuff. Dr. Sanchez. My name's not Sanchez. It's not Sanchez.
Mhm.
And so, what's this saying about the importance of names, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, it's saying everything. And biblically, you know, particularly in the Jewish text, names are important. They tell us who a person is. They say a lot about the essence of a person. There's also an element of respect that comes along, that you see them, you hear them, you recognize them for who they are, and you are aware enough that you're respecting them as a person. And you know, we get this a lot, particularly in America, when it comes to the trans community. As names are changed and pronouns are changed, and people dead name them over and over again in ways that is disrespectful and harmful in massive ways. I think not using. Sometimes we slip on names and we mess up, but being aware and trying is one of the main ways to let people know that you love them, that they are cared for and respected, which is central to good theology, that you see the goodness in another person as much as you see it in them, and you respect it and you want to honor it. And the key way we do that is using correct names, correct pronouns.
Yeah, 100% agree. There's something sacred about showing that you care about somebody enough to try their name. And if it's a name that you're not used to doing, like asking them how to pronounce it, repeating it, trying, making an effort, you know, asking them to help correct you if you say it wrong.
Absolutely.
I think that's important. So, you know, I love your point, Mark, about how biblical it is to have a renaming too, because I agree. I think that's one of the things that we're seeing some confusion about in our culture right now, is especially as we get more trans and gender non-binary folks who are choosing names that feel more authentic to who they feel God has created them to be. Like affirming that and recognizing that that's actually a very biblical thing to do,
100%.
You know,
and not just New Testament biblical, like well before New Testament stuff. We're talking it's part of why Moses asked for God's name, because knowing a person's name gives you some understanding of who they are.
It's powerful.
It's massively important. And the people who are dismissive of it, sometimes it's ignorance, and I think other times it's just uncaring and unloving in a way that's dismissive of people. And when we are dismissive of other people, we're causing so much harm, not just to them, but to ourselves and to the society that we both exist in.
Yeah, 100% agree. Well, there is a lot here, a lot more we could delve into to talk about theology and politics in Blue Beetle. It's a great superhero movie. But if we were to do that, we wouldn't get to our last segment, the Make Me Look Stupid segment. And we have to get to that, Mark. We have to get to it. So why don't we take a quick drop, have another drink, and come back and try to make each other look stupid.
Hey. welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You are here for our final segment, so thank you for all of you who have stuck with us through the live show to arrive at this segment. This is the Make Me Look Stupid segment, and sometimes we try to make each other look stupid. Other times we really just want to pick the brain of the other person to answer a question that we don't quite know the answer to. That's where I'm going to start. It's a question that one of the tags at the end of during the credits, we see down in the, I don't know what to call it, the Beetle cave. I don't know. Down in the Blue Beetle's secret hideaway, the computer turns on and says, now this computer is on, someone must have figured out, about the cave and everything, or the secret layer. And we hear Ted Cord, who is Jenny's dad, who was in terms of comics, he was the second Blue Beetle, but he wasn't, the Scarab didn't take hold of him. He studied the Scarab and used some of what he learned from it to create his own superhero. And by the way, I thought it was so cool that that comic, I think, came out in the 80s, and that in his lair, everything looked like Nintendo and early Apple.
So 80s. Yeah, so 80s. In the music, we should that the music was phenomenal in the film, other than maybe that sudden motley crew. But I mean, the synthesizer music gave it a very 80s feel, which was a lot of fun.
And so much authentic cultural music as well that really just kept the pace moving and felt like it would belong to inside. That was really well done. So anyway, Ted Cord shows up and says, "Let Jenny know that I'm alive."
Yeah.
Where is Ted Cord?
So, Mark, I can say that for the first time, you have stolen the question that I was going to ask you.
I finally stole the question from you.
Look stupid.
I finally stole. Like, you steal it from me all the time.
I know. And today,
it's all worth it today. It is all worth it today. Yeah, I am satisfied. I am so satisfied.
I think that he is.
Hold on. I need to have a celebratory drink real quick.
Yes, drink to this, Mark.
Cheers to me. Cheers to me.
I finished mine. So,
I made extra. I've been topping it off.
Oh, you're smart. You're smart.
Not that. No, I just like my drinks.
I think he is wherever the Scarab originated from. So I think through his research, I think he figured out where it made contact with the civilization in some way, and he is somehow there with them, and is now trying to make contact to get in touch. What do you think?
All right, I think sort of similar, but I have a little bit, a tiny bit of knowledge of the comic, not because I read it, but because I have a couple of comic book friends who, when I told them that I was going to be watching it, kind of gave me some information. So the Scarabs in the comic books, and I will not remember the name of the people who created it. The Scarabs, and there's multiple Scarabs. As a matter of fact, I'll come back to this. This is part of why I used green a lime on my drink. It comes from a group of people who wanted to conquer other worlds I think for various reasons, but partly because there were worlds that they thought that were hurting them. And these Scarabs were to go out to those worlds when they thought it was the right timing and take over the most powerful person, not just the person they felt most connected with, and destroy the world. Okay. That was the idea. God, this is a long explanation. I apologize. And so, in the opening credits, very few people saw, we see the Scarabs going through space. The blue Scarab and the green Scarab actually bump into each other, and there is this electrical thing that happens. I think that short-circuited the blue one, and that's why it didn't try to conquer the world, that it caused a change. And God, like I said, it's a long explanation. On top of it, I think that it got some of the green Scarabs' energy, information, whatever, and it was also short-circuited. Because if you notice, in the layer, there was a mannequin without any costume on it.
Yes, right.
I believe that was intended for Jenny. And in the comic books, there is a green Beetle that shows up. I think at least the plans, if everything goes well, is that Jenny also becomes a Beetle, and she'll be the green one, and they'll figure out that there's something else in the blue Beetle, and they'll pull it off for her. And I think related to that, what happened to Dad was, again, more comic book stuff. Dad had a run where he was big buddies with Booster Gold, who had all kinds of technology from the future. I think they found out that there was this alien culture that was trying to destroy everything. With the help of Booster Gold, which there is a television show in the makes. I don't know if it's late next year or the following year that's coming out.
With Booster Gold.
Yeah, with Booster Gold. And I think that that her dad is going to show, that Ted is going to show up in Booster Gold. I think Booster Gold helped him try to find this group, and probably something, because right now multiple universes are so popular. I think that Booster Gold, in trying to help him find this alien race that was trying to conquer them, accidentally got him stuck in some slightly alternative universe, and he's figured out how to reach out and try to get someone to help him. So that's what they're
not in space, but in another dimension, another
dimension, and maybe not on a planet, maybe in a holding space or something. Maybe kind of along with you, maybe the alien race that created the Scarab found out that he was doing it, and as Booster was trying to help him, trapped him in some alternate universe and a space where he's finally figured out how to communicate from. I think that might have been part of the plan for where this was going to go. If the box office doesn't go well, I don't think we get a second Blue Beetle movie, unfortunately, because I think we deserve one. And I think that the characters, all of them, deserve it.
Yeah.
But that's my take. That's my take. I think it's in there. I could geek out even more about it, but I won't, because I've gone on and on about it too far already.
Booster Gold is kind of a fun character too. That's great. Doesn't understand his equipment that he has. I could see him getting Ted Cord stuck somewhere else on accident.
Exactly. Yeah. And in recent comic books, from what I understand, I haven't read them again, he and Ted Cord become sort of like social media stars. Not so much. They're as much social media stars as they are actual superheroes. And so there's this kind of fun playfulness of, are they real superheroes? Yeah. And of course he messed it up and Ted's stuck somewhere. So, and interesting, here I'm geeking out.
Geek out.
An interesting tidbit here is, do you know who is rumored to play Ted?
No. Ted Cord or Booster Gold?
Ted Cord.
No, who?
And even the abstract picture that her mom painted that we saw of the family kind of looks like him. And he plays a Ted in something that's very famous right now.
Oh,
Jason Sudeikis.
Oh, that would be. I could see
Ted Lasso,
him
right?
doing that. That would Ted Lasso, right? Yeah, he would be great.
There was an early rumor that he was the person. Yeah. The painting, looked a lot like an abstract Jason Sudeikis. Anyway, all right. So I stole your question. You asked it back, which is fair play. But when you steal my question, I always come back with a different one.
That's true, and I also have a different question. Yes, of course. Right. Yes.
I don't know why. I never steal your question. if roles were reversed and you'd never stole a question of mine, I would just come up with one and go, man, this will be work.
Okay, so outside the Reyes' house is a sign. Did you notice the sign that's outside their house, Mark?
Outside the rundown mansion?
No, outside the Reyes' house.
The Reyes' house. The for sale one that has Cord's name on it?
It has Cord's name on it, and it also has a slogan on it. Did you see what the slogan said? I don't think I saw the slogan. So the slogan said, your future awaits. So we've got this Cord sign, and your future awaits. Was that trying to say anything clever about what was going to happen to the Reyes family in the movie, or was that just something that they placed there?
Your future awaits. No, it had to. It's a little too specific not to be kind of a intentional two-part, two double meaning kind of thing of the meaning of the corporation is talking to not. It's kind of like what his sister said. It's that we're invisible to people like that. Even in that sign, that's not intentionally directed at them. That's directed at well-to-do white Americans. Your future awaits. Like we're going to build something for you, kind of thing. But no, I think that wording had to be intentional. I mean, it's very true for all of us. Our future awaits. It depends on how you approach it and how you decide to handle it. And it's very important that the way that the Reyeses decide to do it is family and love and supporting each other. And through that, they do create a better future for themselves. I love the other time that I cried was actually when they are clearly coming back from his funeral or whatever, and they show up at their home. What are we going to do now? And the whole community comes in with food and support and all of that. For me, that was just incredibly beautiful and spoke to really like the larger community, the larger family, and how important that is in terms of your future. It's finding that community that's genuine and real and cares about each other. So yeah, I think there's probably two intentional meanings.
I love that. I love that last scene that you were just describing, because I thought what was going to happen at the end is that somehow there was going to be a white savior from Cord that was going to come in and fix stuff for them.
That would have
been. That's
been
not what happened. That's not what
that-
happened. It was the community that came. And I thought that was a great way to end it. The Reyes' lives weren't fixed at the end of
Not
it.
at all.
Other than
insurmountable
Ford was
things
going
that they
to
gotta
rebuild the house that they destroyed,
which is
but
only
just-
right.
and they weren't going to kick him out. But that's it. I mean, other than that, their lives were still.
But that was Jenny, who was one of them, and had a Latinx background as well, coming in and supporting the community and saying, this company that I'm now the person that leads it is going to do the right thing and make sure that folks are supported and cared for, and that they're not stepped on, that they're not invisible to us anymore. That your invisibility doesn't have to be your superpower anymore, that we are going to be here and present for the community, which I thought was just a beautiful way to wrap all of it up.
Yes, and she didn't say that the corporation was going to solve all their problems, because I mean that's equally problematic. Even if it's a corporation that's run by a person of color, it's still a corporation, and we don't want to find our salvation in corporations. I don't think. And so I
capitalism was a big theme. A big theme in this was how capitalism steps on everybody and what a problem is. And she's still part of this giant corporation that is buying into the capitalistic. I mean, it's part of I think the journey that Jaime went through. He was working through the system that oppressed him, and he was learning that maybe that's not the thing to do.
Yeah, completely agree. I think in terms of the sign, that I think it was a wink to us that the future that awaits them is tied in with Cord and what was coming through
I think story-wise, it definitely means that.
Yeah. So I love this movie, Mark. It was so fun, and I loved all the themes.
I loved it so much.
I am happy. I tried to keep my expectations low, but I was happy about this. I was thought it was
thrilled
a great
about it.
movie.
And honestly, I think if people I know because the marketing was not good. Part of why the numbers. Yes, it beat Barbie, but this is like Barbie's fifth week. I don't know. It beat Barbie, but it's not the numbers they were expecting. But I think that I hope that they recognize that that's because they did an absolutely crappy job of promoting it, and that the writer's strike prevented the actors from promoting it, which I think they were going to lean on pretty heavily. I really hope people pay attention to this movie, because I genuinely think that it has the potential to save the superhero genre. To recognize what they have done here, what works, what makes it so much fun, what makes it so interesting, even down to, I'll geek out a little bit more, his suit was almost 100% practical. There was almost no CGI outside of when he transformed and all that. And so during a lot of the fight scenes that they did in actual settings, not so much CGI background, particularly like in
Right.
hallways and stuff. For me, it just felt so real, so grounded,
Right.
so honest. It didn't feel like there was some, oh, look at that fancy CGI. I don't know. I hope they pay attention to this, that they see how much the audience loves it and they learn from it. It could save the superhero genre. I think it's proof that we're not tired of superhero movies. We just actually want good ones.
That's right. Yeah. Here's looking at you, Quantum Mania, in terms of just CGI backgrounds.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, I think we got the opposite here, and
Yeah,
I agree.
100%.
It was a lot of fun. I loved it.
Okay, we could keep geeking out and continuing to look at this. It's such a rich movie, but we need to look into the future. What should we look at next week? What are you thinking about?
You know, Mark, I was thinking it's been a while since we've hit Star Wars, and
right.
there's a new Star Wars show coming out,
yeah.
Ashoka, and I know you and I both love The Mandalorian, and Ashoka is kind of a spin-off of The Mandalorian, and we're getting the first couple of episodes this week. And so what if we watch the first couple of episodes and talk about Ashoka, and then maybe come back like at the end of the season and
I would love
do a whole thing on the end on all of it? Would that be fun?
I would absolutely love it. I've heard some early feedback, and it sounds like it's going to be really well done and very Star Warsy, which is fantastic. I'm excited about it. So I'm with you.
I mean, you can't get Star Warsy enough, right?
Right,
There's no such thing as too Star Warsy.
Absolutely. I completely agree. All right. So all of you out there, please try to catch the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka and join us next Monday at 4:30 Eastern time for our live broadcast, or download it later, whatever works the best for you. In the meantime, thank you all who listen to the show, who have come and watch it live or download it and listen to it and play back on your podcast. Well, Caleb and I genuinely cannot thank you enough for being part of this and allowing us to have this kind of fun with science fiction, but also with, we're both science fiction geeks and theological and political geeks. So thank you all for allowing us to be able to do this. In the meantime, we appreciate you and invite you back the next time on the Moonshine Jesus Show.
Moonshine Jesus, nobody